Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our final demo in this series. I think this makes nine demos in 3 weeks. Quite a bit. Woof. So thanks for everybody for sticking in there. So today we did something a little bit different. I actually recorded the demonstration yesterday, and I've edited it down and got some zooms in there. So we're gonna watch it together, and then I'm gonna be able to talk you through a little bit of what I'm doing. So it's gonna be mostly all close-ups today, so we can get in there, not a lot of wide shots. But again, I feel like I've shown you guys everything, and this is the last little piece here. And so we'll get in here and really talk about what I'm thinking about and why I do what I'm doing. Although it can seem completely haphazard to the untrained eye, it's all in a full logical world that's built in there. All right, and we're just gonna fill that out and show you how to push and pull and scrape and throw and handle paint today. All right, looks like we got a good crowd. So Miss Claudia, hello, hello. Claudia got a little peek in from Izzy this morning. Thank you, Miss Izzy. Miss Shakti, hello, hello, hello. Cindy's here, as always. I'm Jason, if you're brand new, so welcome, welcome. And Susan made it. All right, so we got a good crowd starting, and I know the others will funnel in as we go. So let's go ahead and get started. So one of the things I hope you notice, this is literally me just getting back into this painting, is I immediately start making marks, right? So from the very beginning to the very end, so much of this is about how we move and work with the material. After we have our intention, it's really a lot more about the material. And if we can bring a good intention together with some good skill at handling the material, then we got a chance for a good painting. So one of the things you just saw me finish was, look how I tied that diagonal shadow into those leaves, right? So we run from the cherry through the pear back to the leaf and out to that last leaf. Do you guys see that line there? And then I'm reestablishing some cast shadows so that I can rebuild this light. One of the things you're going to notice today is how un-object oriented I am. And I hope that get some light bulbs going off for some of you guys. The objects are literally figments of the viewer's imagination. So no matter where I am, I want to deposit the material that I'll be coming back to later and working with. And as I was editing this video down yesterday, I think if I'm completely honest, when I decided to start painting, I knew nothing about art. But I fell in love with how they handled the brush and the material. So we just made a hard edge on that leaf, and then I'm going to come back to the other side of that stroke and soften that edge. but leave the hard edge next to the leaf. So one of the reasons that I skip around and do this, you'll see as I work later into the background, that if it gets too completely flat, it doesn't look good, right? And so we want these things to vibrate a little bit. And notice how this color from the background is occupying a similar plane, a forward-facing plane on that pear. Right? Again, so we're tying that color right through that pear. And this is where a lot of the harmony comes from. So whether it doesn't matter what I'm working on, it's always the same. Put some material down, and then make sure the edges of that material are appropriate. But this isn't always done all at the same time, because sometimes we have to deposit other pieces of paint so that we can bring those pieces of paint together. So as you watch this, you're going to have close enough shots here today that you can literally watch the end of the bristles on the brush, and you can tell by the bend of the bristles the pressure on the brush. And you'll also notice that I usually make at least one good stroke and then kind of hop around that a little bit. You see, I don't worry that I got too dark there. Why? Because I'm going to work that light back into it. But what's important is the soft edges. And I can start in the middle, and then just like on the portrait, I can pull it to that leading edge. I can even give it a little subform on the shoulder at the top there, and then softly get that rolling into the shadow. Good morning, Miss Katie. Again, that's cherry color that I just put on the front of the stem and then on the body of the pear. And then I'm also taking that color and just kissing some of the stem and some of the leaves a little bit. See that going across that thick, dry paint there? And this is how we're going to get a little bit of our subtlety. Again, what seems invisible there, this same paint starts to show up over here. And that's not random. That red is darker, richer for that tabletop, so that's going to pull that tabletop forward. Darker, richer compared to the table between the cherry and the pear. So this really isn't just about that pear as an object. What this is really about is this area of the canvas. And so the real question is there enough visual weight in this area? And I can adjust that weight not just by working on the pear, but by thinking of the whole area around the pear as a singular note. And making that note larger will make it louder, and it'll also exaggerate the steps between the light and the shadow, which again increases the visual weight. So there's a good deposit of paint again. Deposit some material. Then I can start thinking about the edges and tying that in to what was already there. Get the light on the table coming and going. Got some good light against our cast shadows. All right, so with that same material, I just went near to far. It's amazing the subtlety you can have in controlling where the eye goes and how much weight any particular piece of the painting has. Working in this manner is just going to create and give the piece, if done properly, so much more life than just trying to paint that tabletop like you would paint a wall. All right, I've heard Mr. LaFell say if you want the painting to look good, the paint must look good. If you want your painting to be more interesting, well, then the paint strokes need to be more interesting. And are the strokes going to be more interesting if they're all exactly the same? Or will be more interesting if there's variety in them? Will your color be more interesting if it's all the same? Or if there's some variety in it? The greatest pieces of art usually have the simplest pieces, but those pieces will have great variety. So now, is this whole area around the pear more than it was? Absolutely, so there was more visual weight. And I believe it's later, but we're going to add even more weight by adding another layer. Can you see we have the layer of the cherry and the forward leaf, and then we have the layer of the pear, and then behind the pear we have the leaves. And here, so is this a slightly redder, slightly darker, richer than what is above that piece of paint? And so again, what this is doing is it's adding depth, or our second principle, which is dimension. 3 dimension. We're increasing the sense of near to far. And let's do that same sense of near to far here. So a little darker, richer up in the front of the leaf. And then that same color could be the highlight on our cherry. Right? So now those are going to be harmonized. And it doesn't work for a highlight on the pear, but we can get a little bit of that color again. So what we're going to see is this color work across diagonally from that forward leaf across the pear to that leaf on the left side right there. And so those color spots aren't just independent, they have a family lineage, and sometimes through marriage and stuff and in-laws, you can be united to other parts of the town. Look, even on the floor. Giving away the secrets, man. I'm giving away the secrets right here. I hope you guys were able to catch that. And it's all that same principle of working one way and then working across the other in a million different ways. So again, more darker, richer to lighter, grayer. I think more of color runs than I do of objects. Of the patterns of color, just like the patterns of value. A painting is really about patterns of color. And just like when we first start, we think math is just 2 plus 2. But as we go on and get into calculus and other things, we understand that math is much, much more powerful. The same idea here. The idea of pattern, of light, dark, is just so much more powerful. And just like on the tabletop, look at that color go into the background. Because now we've got it like green, orange, green, orange, green, orange pattern, don't we? Was I just saying that painting is about patterns? It's not about drawing an object the way you think it looks. It's literally about creating beautiful color patterns. And then the object will occur in the viewer's mind. And again, the idea here is finish, not start. And I want to remind you that so that you see that literally the way I handle the paint does not change. You cannot begin acting timid at the end of a painting. That's the quickest way to ruin your work. Right, and so we're pushing and pulling lighter to darker, but then as we do that, those colors are involved, a little flavor of it is involved. And that little flavor can make all the difference. If you want the paint to come alive, let the paint be paint. If you want your pear to have life, the brush strokes that make up the pear must have life. The values that make up the pear must have life. Even now, can you guys see through all of this to the simple light-dark pattern that we've just added some color to? Oh, so the blue-gray had its turn, the green-gray. And so now the pear color takes its turn. The neighbor brought you over cookies. Now you gotta cook some brownies and take them to the neighbor. Let's see if I was clever enough to leave that highlight on that cherry darker, richer, and the highlight on that pear lighter, neutral, lighter grayer, believe it or not. Okay, here's that additional layer I was talking about. To add richness to this scene, I'm going to add another light-dark pattern here. And I'm going to disguise it as a eucalyptus leaf on the table. But it's really just a stop-start activity that's going to add to our interest around this area of the canvas where the pear is. So let's draw it with the negative shape there of the table. And then we can get you to the front end by doing more here. Oh, look at that. Somebody overshot. Somebody needs to go back to art school. Whoa, this guy's not even worried about it. Look, he's just moving along like nothing ever happened. I heard a little snippet of somebody talking, playing with Miles Davis, and they were saying he'd hit a note and he'd know technically it was wrong, But Miles would make it right by what he put in around that note, what he filled in around the note that had been played. And that sentiment rang true in this, right? You remember how bright and out of place that mark under the forward leaf looked? And now we spread some of that brightness. It's still a little bit, but it's not as out of place as it was before, is it? So in one sense, the last lesson, and it's almost like you have to have this last lesson before you can start, is that the feel of the material matters. Like laying it down and pulling it and spreading it. And when I first saw people painting, the way they worked with the material of depositing it and spreading it and pulling and carving and lighting things up and fading things away, that was actually what mesmerized me. It's almost embarrassing to say that it was on that I started pursuing this. Again, so it lets that background color almost come in as that reflected light. So what is that? The color's transcending the objects. So it's going to make for a transcendent visual experience. And how interesting just to repeat that pattern right there in front of it on a smaller degree. Painting is about patterns. Nothing more, nothing less. Art is about beautiful patterns. So are you guys noticing that the soft edges don't come all at once, do they? Just like everything else in painting, it's a process, which means there's going to be more than one step. Does this tabletop look richer to you than if you just put it down all in one step from front to back, one color? So that tabletop's a perfect example of the not 1, but 3, not 3, but 7, not 7, but 21, right? And so on and so on. And it's that process that literally is going to give life to the painting. Well, that's part of what gives life. If you do it all with straights and things, there's not going to be any life, right? There's got to be movement, which comes from curves, from gradations, which is what I'm doing right here with the palette knife. But we have to give up in our mind that we think we know what a gradation is and how we do it. And like a child, we have to come to the paint going, how can I gradate this? How many different ways can this gradation happen? In how many different varieties with what vocabulary and tone of voice? With echoes and fireflies in the air. And yet there's no tightness. Do you see that? Occasionally you have to slow down and be careful for an edge or for this or that. But there's great freedom. And you'll see me intentionally run over the back of some of these leaves. Again, that's going to increase right there. Increase this sense of depth on that part, like it's going away into space. So the leaf is created as the painting is created. The pear is created as the painting is created. So there's a wider view. So you can see when you pull out what looked like. Are you kidding me? You're going to leave? It looks just fine. It looks fantastic. And so now on the second part, what we're going to do is we're going to watch the sunflowers. And we're going to start with the dark of the sunflowers. And again, the dark of the sunflowers, I'm not copying something, but I'm setting up a pattern. And I want that pattern to be interesting, but that pattern needs to suggest sunflower leaves. And you're going to be surprised at how little of a suggestion you need to make about sunflowers, and the viewer is going to read sunflower. So we talked about the shadow of the sunflower being our number 3 value and it being the most red. So this is what I'm starting with here. But you can see as I got those other layers underneath that I don't necessarily have to cover every square inch. I can let these brush marks breathe and live a little bit. Right, tie some soft edges in there back together. Some deeper parts down there, slightly darker. right? And without changing it too much, I'm trying to say shadow is shadow. But the shadows on these sunflowers are going to be that strong red. And we can use that to define a few petals. So I hope this is how you guys are finishing your paintings. Right? With confidence, with bravery. I promise you this isn't magic. This is a particular way of thinking and working, and this is working and thinking in mass. And that is the language of the painter. When I saw this, I thought, why would anybody ever work in line? But that's my personality. So some people need to work in line. That's their personality. That's how they see the world. This is how I see and understand the world, or closer to how I see and understand the world. It's going to be up to you to decide how you see and understand the world. But we're getting some beautiful comments here. Mesmerizing. Fantastic. And so if that's true, if you think this is mesmerizing, then that's a key to you see the world a little bit like this. If you're sitting here watching, what is this joker doing, just making a mess? Then that's not probably how you're going to be seeing the world. Unless you happen to love that mess. Right? And it's okay. Either way, we need to be able to see the world in a million different ways. Survival of our species depends on it. And all the different viewpoints. So now what am I doing? I'm going a little darker. It's more orange. Noticing I'm depositing that paint. Actually, I'm coming up from the shadow. It's darker than that yellow, but it's lighter than the shadow. So we've talked about the fence builder for a long time. And that's what seems like nervous habit or something is actually my way of overcoming the fence builder. Making sure I don't have the same mark just repeated over and over and over again. Our natural tendencies to do that. So we have to find ways that we can work in a logical manner, but that we're freer to make some more interesting marks. Right, especially where we want them to be looking on the eye path. Right, some people might call this eye candy, but we need interesting marks. And so then your responsibility as an artist is to think about how can you deposit this material so that there's some interesting things left behind. Beautiful, beautiful people. All is not what it seems. All is not what it seems. So now with that dark, I can carve and talk about the orientation. So I believe it was Claudia that I was teasing on one of our last feedbacks. She had asked if she should just start again, throw it away, and in my mind it was the best start she'd ever done, because there was both structure and mystery. And so what I'm doing here with this dark again is then giving some structure back to that chaos that was just introduced. But too much structure, too much chaos, I don't know, either way just seems too much. Like all things in life, it's a balance. And with every stroke you make, the whole balance changes. So there's no way to plan this out. I mean, there's lots of things we can study, but then when you're doing the painting, you just have to be there, be engaged. And you're basically just the judge. Is that too much? Is that not enough? All right, let this be one run of yellow. And it's subtle. I don't know if you can tell here, but I've actually gone lighter and grayer on this yellow than I did with that warmer yellow on that front flower. That'll be a subtle little way that we can get dimension in here without necessarily spelling everything out. Okay, guys, I hope you guys are in love with all these strokes. I am just so in love with all of this. I mean, don't you just want to take it home and eat it and protect it forever and never let anything ever touch it or happen to it? Okay, we'll get some tissue because you're going to be really sad here in just a minute. Because all I'm doing right here is depositing the material. Right, so the idea of this painting is that pair to be more. And right now those sunflowers are more. So we've got to think about quieting those down. One way we can quiet those down is by bringing what's around those sunflowers a little closer to the sunflowers. We can also quiet it down by softening edges. So I think I've covered somewhere, I can't remember where, how we only work in two directions. We work along and across. So part of softening edge is coming back and working across the mark you've made. Right? And you can do that with all kinds of tools. And just like I let the paint be paint, I want to let the paper towel make the organic marks it's going to make. And again, by tying this into the background around it a little bit, it's going to soften the impact. I know this is exactly how you guys finish your paintings too, right? Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. When we first began talking, I don't think I've said it for many, many months, but we talked about how with every single stroke, you should just try to do the best stroke you ever did. And at the same time, you got to hold into your mind that this is just a little piece of cotton or a little piece of board. So what? It's not going to change the world. And it seems to me you need both of those thoughts to have the freedom and the discipline, right? The desire. But how do you soften an edge? Oh, let me count the ways. But if you don't understand that I'm working on edges here, you might think I'm just a madman. And even more than edges, I'm working on the visual impact of this part of the painting versus the visual impact of the pear, which is ultimately going to be the focal point. Remember, these flowers up here are the goodbye. And I set that up on purpose like this. That's part of the challenge. How do you make something as lively and exciting as sunflowers be quiet? Be themselves, but just be a little quieter. That was literally a piece of the concept for this painting. I mean, how much does it take? Along, across, along, across, along, across. In all that chaos, that's basically all you saw was me either working along or across. I'm telling you guys, if you can see it simple, if you'll see it simple, the freedom and simplicity is so unbelievable. And you know what? I'm not a botanist. I don't care if that's what a sunflower looks like. That's not my subject matter. My subject matter is beauty. So the real question is for you to ask, what is your subject matter? What are you actually painting? And look, after all that craziness, it actually doesn't look that crazy. It's still too bright for that pear, but you get the sense for what we could do. So the video is going to finish up here with a few shots and run over the canvas with a little better, closer lights and stuff here in just a second. So why don't we be quiet and just let you guys see the end of this. Okay, guys, there you have it. There you have it. At least to this point, that's as much as I have that I've able to get onto camera. For me, the process is difficult because for me to work, I'm very, very open, and it's hard for me to even read your comments. But anyway, I hope this brought some light to what we're doing. I hope you'll work. I hope you create a mess. I hope you gain freedom. I hope you'll try to do it a little bit differently, even if it means destroying a couple of paintings. So what? So what? Okay, everybody. Have a wonderful day. We'll be back tonight for Sketch Club. And then Friday will be our last class. So I hope everybody will be able to make it. Please send in something, and it'll be nice to have a beautiful last class before we get into our painting courses. All right. Love you guys so much. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.